Gross NPA stood at 8.4% and net NPA stood at 3.3%. Additionally, the company has adequate liquidity and a strong balance sheet position, which makes us well positioned and agile to achieve growth over the medium to long term while the demand remains strong. Moving on to our capitalization and liquidity position, our capital base continues to be strong with a capital adequacy ratio of 25.3%, which is well above the regulatory requirement. In addition to that, we have proactively taken steps to augment our capital position by successfully raising 120 crores via rights issue of partly paid equity shares. Of this, we have already received approximately 90 crores. The balance amount will be called as determined by the board. During FY21, the company raised debt of rupees 4,312 crores, including direct assignment transaction of 743 crores. Also, in Q1 of FY22, the company raised $5 million from Development Bank of Austria through external commercial borrowing channel and raised 25 crores from a private bank. Liquidity-wise, we continue to remain in comfortable position with cash reserves of rupees 1,469 crores as of 31st March 2021. Further, we have undrawn sanctions worth 143 crores. Our structurally positive ALM also adds to our advantage. On our geographic expansion front, as on 31st March 2021, our total branch network stood at 1,257, spread across 388 districts. Our total state and union territory count is at 23 now. Our diverse presence across district states coupled with a well-penetrated branch network had helped us emerge as a strong pan-India microfinance player in the industry. As of 31st March 2021, 95.8% of our districts have less than 1% of portfolio exposure, which we aim to bring it down further in the coming times. We have seen a significant reduction in our portfolio risk in terms of average exposure per district, which stood at 0.26% in FY21 versus 0.45% in FY17. Exposure to top 10 districts stood at 14% in FY21 versus 27% in FY17. Exposure to top 4 states stood at 54% in FY21 from 77.3% in FY17. We continue to be one of the leading microfinance players in terms of customer base, well-penetrated branch network across states, and with 76% of rural exposure. Our well-thought diversification has helped us sail through these unprecedented times and leverage our idea of cross-selling products. In FY21, we have been able to disburse close to 67 crores under the product financing category, which includes loans for bicycles, solar products, home appliances, consumer durables, and water and sanitation. Considering the surge in cases in April 2021 with the advent of the second wave of the pandemic, we expect the statewide lockdown to influence the Q1 FY22 performance. With collection officers finding it difficult reaching out to customers, we have already witnessed a marginal drop in collection efficiency for the month of April 2021, which stood at 93%. Greater the adversity, bigger the opportunity. Given the nature of this pandemic, opportunities are immense to cope with the challenges of cash collection, driving financial inclusion and boosting cashless transaction. SCNL has made loan repayments more seamless for its customer by introducing UPI AutoPay. SCNL is the first player in the microfinance segment enabling customers to repay their loan via a UPI platform. We have also facilitated a digital ecosystem across all our branches in India, and our efforts will enable us to improve our collection efficiency in the coming quarters and transform Satin into a digital-focused financial institution. As of 31st March 2021, our cashless collection stood at 8%, while we have successfully implemented 100% cashless disbursement across all our branches. Now to give you a quick update on the performance of our subsidiaries, through which we are looking forward to growing our secured lending portfolio. Satin Housing Finance Limited has 2 successive profitable quarters despite challenging business environment. PAT for FY21 stood at 1.4 crores. Our book comprises of affordable housing at 79% and LAP at 21%. AUM stands at 226 crores and disbursement for FY21 stood at 118 crores. Equity infusion was 15 crores done during FY21. CRAR stood at 90.2% and SHFL has credit rating of CARE BBB stable with 0 delinquency. SHFL witnessed an AUM growth of 63% for FY21, which is impressive in the current business environment. Satin Finserv has 2 consecutive profitable years with PAT of 4.8 crores for FY21. SFL's AUM stands at 131 crores. The total net worth stands at 107 crores. CRAR for Q4 FY21 is 81.4%. SFL is operational in 8 states with 15 branches and 1,725 active loan clients. SFL had an AUM growth of 18% of FY21 and has credit rating of CARE BBB- stable. Our AUM under business correspondent services offered by Taraashna Financial Limited has increased to 748 crores. As of 31st March 2021, the company operates in 7 states through 217 branches. The company has more than 3.9 lakh active loans currently. The company added 2 new partners for business correspondent and started sourcing loans under Nai Roshni for SCNL as well as SFL. Altogether, the contribution of our non-MFI lending portfolio has increased to 8% of the total AUM, in line with the company's endeavor to diversify risk while achieving a better product mix to achieve the next leg of growth. Our long-term endeavor remains to achieve a significant contribution from our secure lending portfolio in the coming years. Going forward, we believe that there will be a pickup in consumption as the curve flattens, vaccination rate improves, and the local restrictions start to ease out, which should build a positive momentum for us as well as the entire industry. On that positive note, I would like to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The first question is from the line of Shreyas from Spark Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Just wanted to check that in this 8.4% NPA that we have, is it possible to provide a split between how much is from the pre-COVID book and how much is from the post-COVID book?
My own sense is technically, if you really look at it, this is all the post-COVID book. This is technically very little which could probably be the pre-COVID book. So majority the post-COVID book.
And is there a possibility, sir, that you're considering in terms of also restructuring some of these post-COVID advances under the restructuring 2.0 guidelines? If yes, could you give us a sense of what that quantum could be like?
See, too early right now to probably have a quantum to be looked at, but definitely yes, as compared to the previous first wave, and the second wave, the difference probably lies in the fact that there was a moratorium in the last wave, and this time the moratorium has not been there. But yes, definitely yes, the DPD in the earliest this thing has probably been there, and there is because of lockdowns, I think there was some income generating losses which did happen to the borrowers. We might look at it restructuring definitely in a more positive frame of mind rather than what the first wave had. But the quantum right now, I think leaves us not to probably hazard a guess where it will go.
And sir, if I might could sort of squeeze in one last question. Could you, sir, give us a sense of how your 30-plus book looks like, and if there are state-specific concerns on collection efficiency going into April and May? That's the last question from my end, sir.
Technically, 30-plus is also not very significant in terms because the lockdown, if you really look at it, probably had 1 month, complete lockdown, and I would say some states definitely did have a 1.5 month lockdown, but in fact, whenever curfew used to eat, we were able to do some collection of that lot, So my own, thought process and the way it is, 30 plus would probably be significantly less than what probably 1 to 30 will probably carry on,
And any views, sir, on state-specific collection efficiency issues? Anywhere where you're seeing a lot of stress, where you believe the collection efficiencies are expected to be lower than 75% for May and June?
The stress, you have to probably not look at this as probably a stress scenario. You have to look this from a lockdown scenario. There's a difference between the stress building up and the lockdown scenario. Thankfully, what we've encountered during this collection, a cycle of ours, post the during the lockdown as well as now the opening up, the intent remains perfectly fine. So our sense is it's only because of the lockdown and the logistical measures that we were not able to reach them and get the collection is where the part in the early this thing has come in here. So it's not a stress, but it's definitely yes a logistical issue which probably relates to the DPD in the early numbers.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rishikesh Oja from Robo Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Very good morning. Just had a question regarding the credit cost. So, have we taken all credit cost in March? And also, if you could give the credit cost for the second wave.
We make the provision based on the ECL model and depending upon the past trends of 5 years, we have made enough provision. There were very positive collection trends from December onward till second, third week of April. So all the sort of the provision that is required till 31st March has already been taken care.
And just to answer your question on the credit cost for the second wave, see, too early to hazard a guess. But the best part of the whole thing is that because of technical issues and the secured as what it was, our sense is it will be the early numbers which probably will be affected, in this second wave rather than the NPA levels. So in terms of credit cost, our own sense is that I think it'll be lesser than what it was, as to compared to the earlier wave which was there, where I think it was a long period of moratorium, lockdowns and things happening across. Fairly, and thankfully, this has been a very short period of lockdown. So our sense is the credit cost will not be, as difficult and as negative as what it was earlier.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Balakrishna from Axon Investments. Please go ahead.
Good morning, sir. My question is regarding marginal cost of borrowing. Can you please tell me the marginal cost of borrowing in Q4?
Most of the sanctions are in the range of 11%. The cost of borrowing is broadly stable. It has not gone up, not gone down. So broadly around 11%.
Yes. Another question is related to Satin Housing Finance Limited. Can you give me your vision of where do you see in terms of AUM in 1 year to around 5 years? I mean, what is your target on SHFL?
See, SHFL, to be very honest, is an outlier in our subsidiaries. So being an outlier, I think the way it has panned out in the last 3 years with zero delinquency, and I can probably give you that. In spite of the fact that lockdowns and all were still there, they've still done an impressive collection efficiency. Our own sense is that SHFL will probably be one of the strongest subsidiary of ours, which probably takes the cue in doing a ramp up in terms of our growth. It grew by about 63% even in this pandemic and during this year, which was probably more difficult to probably navigate. Looking at that, if we grew by 63% in a difficult year, our own sense in the next 5 years it probably will have a very healthy growth looking forward.
Okay. And the last question is related to vaccination. So do you have any side of data regarding what percentage of employees are vaccinated either with first dose or second dose or something like that?
So what we are doing technically for the last 1 week, once the lockdowns have started opening, all our regional offices are actually doing drives to get our employees vaccinated. In fact, we had in about 8 regions this Sunday that the vaccination drive was going on for all our employees in the field. The head office is having a vaccination drive today. So if you really ask me, the target set by our HR department is that by July end, we want to vaccinate all our employees. The 10,000 strong, each one of them gets vaccinated by July end.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll get back into the queue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask the question. The next question is from the line of Vishal Rampuria from JB Capital Markets. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Singh and Jugal. So I've got 2 questions to ask you. One is that past 2-3 years, Satin has taken a lot of steps to improve the process and the technology usage. So can you help us understand where we are in terms of those processes? Are we getting the required benefits? What was envisaged when those things were rolled out or started with? This is the first question to start with.
Yeah, so Vishal, I probably cannot have a direct, correlation with the operating cost, which probably has come down because, I think if I do that right now, based on technology, I probably will not be giving you a very honest answer to it because there was lockdowns, there was, probably, dip in the expenses as compared to what it was, just a simple factor that travel being restricted. I think, if you really look at the expenses, it won't be there, but definitely yes. Still, the fact was that the operating cost did go down by about 1%, with us, But having said that, I think, Vishal, what we are as an endeavor doing it in Satin is that we do rejig our processes compared to what the environment actually means, And the environment, not to say the least, has probably been very challenging at every point of time, So you have to really, change your tack, every 6 months, the way it is going on. Having said that, definitely yes, the thing which I said earlier that we are probably the only institution to get into UPI 2, but the process really works in a longer run, but the benefits start arising maybe in a shorter spurt, year on year. But yes, we are very definitely looking at digitizing completely our operations as well as digitizing our process. It's a thing which keeps on happening across this thing. It will definitely, yes, at some point of time lead to more optimum efficiency as well as maybe a clear cut not increase in the operating cost or maybe a decrease in the operating cost.
So I understand your point that last year was difficult year because of COVID and a lot of cost metrics completely went into haywire. So forget about the cost metrics. I'm only asking you about the operational efficiency, which was the key reason why Satin went into change in your process, investment in your technologies. Are you seeing improvement in your operating efficiency, whatever be the key parameters which you would have set out for yourself, for the company? Are you seeing improvement there or not? That's the key question to understand.
Vishal, we are seeing an improvement. That is the reason why I said. But you cannot technically, look at the year gone by with the year which was previous to that. There's a difference. So that is what I said. Now, technically, if you really ask me today, the whole spurt is on collection efficiencies as well as collection metrics. We've added, close to about 1,000 guys into our field. If you look at the optimum efficiency, definitely that, if you really ask me in terms of the borrowers being done by our loan officer, it will not be commensurate to the way the second wave and the pandemic is behaving. So it is not a very clear year in terms of where everything is stable that we will really be able to do that. But having said that, because the environment needs changes because of the pressure on the asset quality, we definitely have increased our feet on street. But the moment it gets stable across, whatever we brought in as process and technology, definitely there is a huge uptick in terms of the advantages which will flow in through that.
Okay, my second question to ask you is that what is the incentive scheme for the field officer, people who are involved in disbursing loan at the ground level, and also people who are involved for the collection also?
Vishal, what do you want to hear on that? Incentive schemes are not based on disbursements or anything. It is based on the definitely the number of borrowers serviced as well as it is based on the asset quality. So that is where portfolio quality, where the incentive scheme works for the field employees.
And last thing is that in the last quarter gone by, the operating expense ratio has increased to 6.37 as shown in your PPT. Any one of expense to call out in this quarter?
As I said earlier, we've added more feet on street because the stress in the asset quality is there, and to reach out to each and every borrower and look at and motivate them to get back into the collection efficiency mode as well as to get their collection. That is why the feet on street has been increased, and that is one of the main reasons why there is a slight spurt in terms of the operating cost.
So you are saying that more expense is coming because of the investment in the recovery team. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So one last question to ask you. Yeah, one last question is on the non-paying customer. So this non-paying customer 1.5% as on March, does it also include your off-book also?
No, this is on-book.
So what would be the number including the off-book?
I don't have a clear number basically, but off-book technically for us is DA, which is there. As you very well know, DA is not technically our book and our portfolio. So we have the numbers, but I think we can probably provide you offline. The off-book numbers also.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rishabh Bhatia from CIAT. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My question pertains to a comment wherein you mentioned that the stress is mostly due to collection and inability to collect and less due to the intent. I'm wondering how much of a role rural monsoon, third year running rural monsoon would have in aiding your ability to collect, not just from the collection point of view, but also from the ability to pay. And does the current COVID scare in rural India significantly affect the ability to pay in terms of creditworthiness?
So let me answer on the monsoon first. So as per the current way, I think the projections are being made, the monsoons are going to be normal, which augurs well for the ability for the customer to really repay. Since we operate in about 76% in the rural economy, so that is a positive sign which is there. The second is the scare of the second wave. The scare of the second wave probably has died down to a large extent also in the COVID, since the numbers, if you look at even the urban space, have been going down drastically. Similarly, the way the states have unlocked and things are opening up, the scare which was there in the larger part of May, I think is not there once the lockdowns happen. Definitely, yes, we are looking at, and the improvement is happening in the last 1 week or so, 2 weeks or so, once the lockdowns have eased out, and we're looking at far more positive impact on the collection efficiency also going forward.
So the creditworthiness is not significantly affected, and even if it is, it could be repaired by a good monsoon or the proceeds of a good monsoon.
Yes, we technically also hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sharvesh Gupta from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead.
Good morning, sir, and thanks for taking my question. So first question is on the credit cost, we have roughly provided for around 4% of the consolidated book. What were the write-offs in this year, sir?
It's close to about 150 crore or so in value terms. Roughly half is write-off, half is credit cost provisioning.
So this 300 odd crore is inclusive of that write-off statement?
300 crore is...
That is over and above the...
That is over and above. That is a provision lying in the balance sheet.
Yeah, so 450 crores in total, right?
So there was something in the beginning of the year also. So the way to look at it is that we have around 3.96% as a credit cost for the year, and the outstanding provision lying in the balance sheet is about 5.1%. 5.1%, yeah.
Okay, and now you are saying that so from Q4 of FY22 to FY20 to FY21, maybe this was a slightly more bigger figure than this 450 odd crores. but you are saying that in FY22 we expect a lower sort of credit cost plus write-offs.
Yeah, we hope so. To be very honest, that's what I said. Technically we are looking at a younger DPD, which is probably coming up. So our own sense is that it will probably not reach the NPA levels, and that's what our thought process is as the initial things look like. So yes, what you said should hold true, that the credit cost would probably be lower than what it was during this year.
And then just to add, when we are expecting the economy to grow close to double digit, when we are expecting a normal monsoon, all those things will overall impact the livelihood of all the borrowers, and in turn their repayment capacity.
Understood. And sir, because your top state, which is UP, never really had some sort of a big COVID scare as such, right? So at least in the official numbers. So how is the behavior of the borrowers in UP and Bihar? I mean, these two states seem to be the least severely affected by COVID second wave. So how have that worked out in May and June?
So honestly, the numbers probably do not say what probably is there. The scare was all across India, in every state, But having said that, I think, UP and Bihar has been more resilient in terms of a bounce back. And in fact, that is probably has been there even in the pandemic, the first wave also. And thankfully, our largest geographies, have probably been far more resilient and far more are able to really bounce back, much better than probably the.
So just to add, UP, Bihar, Punjab, and MP, which have 54% of the AUM, had a collection efficiency of 98% throughout the year.
Understood. And any guidance on the loan book growth for this year that you are targeting?
So there's no, not any guidance which we are giving, but we are saying that, we will remain very in our growth section, because we will still have to, the main focus is on portfolio quality and building up our processes and technology. I think, that is where our main focus lies right now.
Okay. Now, with regard to the new regulations which have just, the draft has been announced. So, in case that draft is implemented, what is the sustainable impact on our NIMs and hence the ROAs in the business? Do they have any impact?
See, I probably will not be able to give you a right answer on this, but yes, it does have a positive impact in terms of our ROA and NIMs, because the margin cap, technically, the draft regulation says the margin cap goes away, and also in terms of the two lender norms and all that, probably is taken away. So it becomes a level playing field even for the NBFC MFI to operate in this segment, which earlier was probably more skewed towards the banks and the other institutions. So my sense is, I can't hazard a guess, but yes, it will be a positive impact on the ROAs as well as the NIMs.
Understood, sir. Thank you, sir, and all the best for the coming quarters.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nidesh Jain from Investec India. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. Can you share some more data in terms of asset quality in the microfinance segment as of March 21 in terms of PAR 30, PAR 60 data, if you can share that?
I will first like to disclose that to the stock exchange. As Mr. Singh said in one of the previous answers that PAR numbers are well under control and much better than the previous quarter. We will, in case we share, we will first share it at the exchange and then with outside.
Also, asset quality in the housing finance and MSME finance. I understand these are a smaller part of the business, but if you can share how is the GNPA number in these two business as of March 21?
So housing finance, that's what I said. It's zero delinquency numbers, and in SFL it's about 1.5%.
1.5%.
Yeah,
Is there in the presentation? But yeah, these are the numbers.
Sure. And lastly, do you see a possibility of capital raise in this coming financial year? Or do we think we are adequately capitalized? What is the Tier 1 ratio that we have as of March 21?
So Tier 1 is close to 20%. Overall, we are at 25%. As we are not anticipating any, very aggressive growth for this year, we feel that our present capital adequacy is sufficient for our business plan. We have to receive another 30 crore out of the right issue proceed that should come sometime in second quarter. So I think we don't need capital right now. We don't need too much capital to support the growth of our subsidiaries, etc. They are also well capitalized for the time being. So no immediate plans, but we'll sort of decide as we move along.
Sure. That's it from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shripal Doshi from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. So my question was with respect to collection efficiency against the billing. So what would that number be for Feb, March, April, May, and June?
I don't think that will have any meaning because, when they were overdue, so we'll allocate, first due, first collection. So when there are sort of a high number of, past clients, and then you allocate it to the previous month because, the way we look at is what is the billing for the month versus what is the collection for the month, including arrears, but we don't include prepayments in that. So to that extent, this number is quite reflective of, how many clients are paying who are live clients. This is a better and right reflection of the collection trend.
The cumulative collection efficiency for FY21 is 94. So have we not counted the month of moratorium time period and then only accounted for the remaining time period?
The moratorium was there was no demand during the moratorium period. So when we have given moratorium, that means that there's no, billing for that period. The customer who could pay means that has been taken in, billing as well as in collection. But once we have given the moratorium, that is not considered as amount due because, that is what the entire purpose of moratorium was.
Okay. So we've given customers, non-paying customers number. What would that number be for partly paying customers? Like.
So we have given that number last month, last quarter, as sort of say we have 105% collection for the month of March. So most of the customers have started repaying and paying only on a month-on-month basis in the month of March.
But the other thing also, I think, partly paying technically would probably be not that big basically, I think, which will be there. So if this is 1.3, we can probably look at maybe some slight uptick in terms of partial payment there, but we don't have the numbers right now. Probably can, do it offline with you at some point.
Sure. So we've given the write-off number to be 150 crore for the year. What is our write-off strategy? I mean, as in after how many days do we tend to write it off, or was this a proactive measure to write off early?
So, we continue to keep making effort till the time, we decide that the cost of recovery is, more than the recovery itself. We continue to keep making effort and we have collected around 13 crore out of the write-off amount. So we normally write off it from the books when it is 480 days plus, but make adequate ECL based on our trends, etc.
Okay, 480 DPD is the write-off. Okay, got it. And so, just on the other businesses like housing and the SME business. So, what is the? I mean, I know earlier participant also asked, but what is the thought process on the after say at 2025 sort of a number, wherein what kind of a AUM number you're looking at, and what kind of ROE businesses are these going to be like? And in future, do we plan to split these businesses into a separate entity, like separately list it or sell it off? So just give some, if you can just give some color on those lines.
See, we are building it up, to be very honest, and right now, if I hazard any guess, I think it'll probably be too speculative to look at it. But the thought process is, since both these businesses are profitable right now for us, in its inception, I think, we are looking at maybe a significant growth in both these portfolios as well as the companies, How things pan out, definitely yes, but I can just probably hazard one statement to you is that yes, we would look at monetizing both the subsidiaries of ours at a certain point of time. That is what our thought process is. But once it becomes very significant enough to look at, and we are building this up in the same level, to look at it. So we will definitely look at how we monetize that in a better space to get the benefits even for the parent company from both these entities.
Is there just some color on the ROE sort of a business model that we're building for these two, businesses?
See, I'll be very honest. It's too early in our life to probably do that, But the stress is more on good growth and portfolio quality. I think that is what we are probably constantly looking at or building it up. ROA again will probably be looked at how our growth happens and how we are really looking at. But MSME definitely is a high ROA growth level trajectory. Housing, yes, to a certain extent, has also an ROA trajectory, but maybe slightly lower than what MSME would be. But yes, the idea is again to really monetize both these assets of ours, in the times to come, so that the benefit also goes back to the parent company as well as building these businesses to a certain scale.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. I'll come in the queue if I have more questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vivek from DSC Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Sir, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. I think most of my questions got answered, so I'll just ask a larger macro question. In terms of the resilience of your customers, it has been extraordinary in terms of how they've, collection efficiency is picked up, and you don't see it in urban India. So there seems to be like a two India story going on. So could you please just, spend a couple of minutes to explain the macro part of your story, what gives you the confidence the customers will come back so strongly because they already have? That's my question, sir. Thank you.
See, if I give you a prelude into the first wave, when it was 4 months of complete moratorium and not being there, In fact, our thought process was also that once you start being there in touch with your customers, and it's a high touch point game, that there will be challenges in terms of the collection efficiency bouncing back, but rightfully and thankfully it did. Similarly, what we see even now, since the biggest part of microfinance is the high touch mechanism of a customer, and we do bi-weekly collection. Our sense is that once you're able to motivate, meet the customer, look at the levels of bringing him back into the system of collection efficiency as well as, the credit bureau and all related aspects to it, I believe the factors are probably far more positive to get a better rate of collection efficiency at lower credit cost, but definitely yes, the installments are less as compared to probably the way it pans out in terms of a higher ticket size loan. My own sense is all these factors put together, rural, normal monsoons, all these factors, which bunched together, give us probably that confidence that yes, whatever happens, and we've been seeing from demonetization onwards, so it's not been any year which has been a lull, demonetization, then the pandemic for 2 years in a row, so 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 years have probably just been that, but still the resilience of the customers to come back and be there in the system is probably noteworthy to look at the portfolio quality in that context.
So since you've had many years of experience, would it be fair to say that their steadiness of cash flows has improved over a period of time, in the sense that there's not just a borrowing pattern, but the income streams, it's become larger, more steady compared to the past, or is it still very volatile?
See, I believe it's not volatile. What happens is, and I think that's probably the best thing about it, it's not one stream of income which comes from a household in the rural space, There are at least bare minimum 2 to 4 streams of income which come in. So even if there is kind of a lockdown or a pandemic or something like this externally which happens, there could be a challenge in one stream of income, but, making all 3 streams of income probably just go down and for you not to repay is one of the key issues which is there in terms of repayment. I can't say about the intent issue, but definitely yes, that is something which is probably not factored in the cash flows which probably work in. But yes, definitely yes, the cash flows do bolster up in terms of 3 or 4 streams of income for the household that the collection efficiency keeps on happening the way it is.
Sir, thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amit from Aditya Birla Capital Limited. Please go ahead. Amit, may I request you to unmute your line from your side and go ahead with your question?
Yeah, I'm not from Aditya Birla Capital. I'm just a retail investor. So, sir, my question related to the small finance bank license. Just if you can throw some light on that. In the past, I think the group had indicated it will be open to going for that license. So just wanted to get some color on A, the interest, and B, the timing. Yeah.
See, again, I can't give you anything on this. Right now, the efforts and everything is on collection efficiency and asset quality. I think, for us, maybe the next 6 months or a year are cut out to look at all this. I can't give you any concrete thought process of what we are looking at in terms of SFB or any kind of this thing. Right now, fully concentrated on looking at this. So maybe when the opportune time comes, I think, we might take a look, but nothing as of right now.
Sure, sir. That's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dheeraj Sachdev from Roha Asset Managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning and hi team. First of all, good that you all have created enough buffer or capital adequacy provision in tough times. So good. My question pertains to what is the average yield on different assets across different segments. If you can just give me some sense on that.
So, when we are pricing our product, we maintain the 10% margin. So our cost of fund is around, 11, and then including. So are you talking about microfinance or talking about housing and other businesses?
Yeah, microfinance, even so both microfinance and housing and other segments.
Okay. So while doing the pricing in microfinance, we maintain the 10% margin. So we are lending close to around a little over 21%. Though there has been some yield loss because of overdues, etc. During the last year or so. In terms of housing, our blended yield is close to around 14.5%, and SME, we broadly lend at 22-23%.
Okay. And within housing, there is still small subsidiary, but how much is retail and how much is non-retail?
So everything, 100% is a very, very granular retail book with, a good mix of salaried, non-salaried. Over 85% of the clients are end user, taking it for their own usage, etc. There's a very small lab book. It's a very, very granular retail, affordable micro housing book.
Okay.
It's very good portfolio quality. Yeah.
Fine. But the other thing is, when you look at the presentation, I think the number of customers in microfinance has reduced over the last 3-4 years or so, from 35 to about 30 lakhs. Whereas as our gross loan portfolio has gone up from about 7,000 to 8,300 crores. So can we assume or interpret this as the average ticket size rising per customer?
So this is mainly related to the inflation which is there. So technically, the inflation cost takes care of the thing. But it's broadly remained in the range of about 32,000 rupees odd. And majority for the last couple of years, we're looking at repeat customers largely rather than acquiring new customers. So that is where you'll see probably a difference. So there could be still some dropouts happening across. That's the reason why I think there's a slight dip. And I don't think that was 35 at any point. I think the highest we went was up to about 32 lakh 32 lakh customers, which is now down to about 29 and a half odd.
Okay. But we can't indicate that as the average ticket has gone up. They are more seasoned book from the news that.
Yeah, it's more of a season book, more repeat customers coming in. Slight uptick in terms of the average ticket size.
Okay. And third is we mentioned about the collection on a digital or UPI platform. How much of the disbursement is also online completely instead of loan officers physically? Doing the KYC, etc. So I'm talking about not only the disbursement but also the online KYC, everything online without having a face of the customer. Is there anything in the system?
Yeah, so the disbursements are completely online, straight to their bank accounts. KYC also we do a centralized shared service this thing where KYCs are digitally mapped with the election commission's website. So it's done there. So I would say probably the maximum part is all digital in terms of the thing, except for the fact that yes, the loan officer does have to bring in the borrower and they have to bring in documents. We are trying to also do a lot of system checks in that, where we are able to build up, completely digital mapping of KYC as well as, collection. But still some time away where we are able to do e-KYCs and all, I think we are not technically allowed to do e-KYCs and all, so but the moment that comes through, I think we are technologically fully compliant to address and do that.
Okay, fine. Thanks, Mr. Singh and team, and all the best to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sripal Doshi from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Just had one more question, sir, which was with respect to what measures did we take during the second wave in terms of did we give any EMI holidays or repayment holidays to our customers, or the normal collections went on as it is?
No, so no holiday which was given. Technically, wherever there used to be curfew which used to happen during the afternoon until the evening, we used to do the collections since early morning. Wherever we were able to reach the customer, where the branch was not infected, our employees were not infected, we could probably do a little bit of that. But where there was complete lockdown, we were not able to reach them. That is where a large part of the problem did lie. So that is how during the complete lockdown days in various states this all was panning out.
Okay, so okay, got it. Okay, sir, thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shreyash from Spark Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Missing one last question from my end, sir. It's in relation to your portfolio in Assam and West Bengal. Given that most of your peers have sort of in the past spoken about the risk on the portfolio in those two states, could you directionally, sir, without any numbers, guide us on what your views are on additional incremental disbursements to those states and the portfolio at risk, if at all, in that state?
So Assam, I think is still a lot of conversation which is going on with the state government in terms of what they deem to probably give it as loan waivers and everything, but nothing which has probably been concluded. And our sense is, I think the impact will probably be, our own senses will not be that big in terms of where it probably go, and we've provided a lot of it in our balance sheet. Having said that, there is no disbursement right now which is taking place. In fact, the disbursements have stopped in Assam since the last, my sense is about 6 months or 6 to 8 months. It has probably been stopped over there. So that is where Assam stands. West Bengal, because of lockdown, it's still going on. The thing is that we've done sufficient ECL for that, but nothing which probably gives us a right of concern in technically West Bengal. But yes, Sam, we're just waiting for the state government measures to probably come in terms of the bill and the and the loan waiver which they talk about. So we'll see once that thing comes in. And a large part of our SAM portfolio is also under assignment. So that is one factor which we are also looking at maybe in a positive frame of mind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking out time and coming to attend our call to this morning. I hope we've been able to address all your queries. For any further information, please get in touch with me. My name is Aditi and I head the Investor Relations for Satin Creditcare. You can also get in touch with Strategic Growth Advisors or SGA, who are our IR advisors. And I would like to again take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining the call. And I'm sure we'll weather this crisis together and emerge stronger. I wish everyone a great health. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Satin Creditcare Network Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.